Hello, beautiful people. In today's episode, I spoke to my friend Oliver, and we spoke about how he grew on Twitter from 0 followers in March of 2020 all the way up to now over 20,000 at the time of this recording. We spoke about just not only how to grow, but also his mindset on a bunch of different things. He's an agency owner. He's a general all-around sound dude, and really blessed to have him on the podcast today. And so if you guys enjoy this episode, let me and Oliver know at Hey Danny Miranda. Leave a review on iTunes and subscribe. Just enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get to it.
Interesting people, thought-provoking conversations, nutrition for your brain. Journey through the minds of the world's top performers and discover what it really takes to achieve your highest version. This is the Danny Miranda Podcast.
I'm so blessed and so happy to have you on the phone today, and thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you, Danny. I've been following you for longer. I think I found you through Tej. And we were just talking before, right, how it's interesting and funny how you can feel like you know someone if they're unique enough on Twitter that you can feel like you know them, right? And especially with Periscope and with interactions with people. So yeah, it's fun to finally have a live interactive conversation.
For sure. And so for people who don't know you, let's give them a little brief overview of who you are and how you got to this point.
Sure. So I'll do a 60 second thing here. So I'm 35 years old. I live in Montreal now, and I spent the first 15 years of my working life in various sales and marketing corporate roles. I've, my Twitter bio is that I've coached over 1,000 people, meaning I've hired, I have fired some people. I manage managers and leaders and senior managers to create healthy businesses, sometimes purely on the sales side, sometimes purely on the marketing side, and sometimes a hybrid of both. And about 3 years ago, I became interested in online business. So we're recording this in summer 2020. So about 3 years ago, I discovered online marketing. Before that, my view was that, or at least my perspective was that to do something different, you had to really invent something new, right? Like a tech startup. And when I discovered, things like e-commerce, like copywriting, like media buying, it really changed my life. I iterated and failed at a number of things, info products, freelancing. And about 18 months ago, things finally clicked. I started doing client work, which became an agency. And now, again, at time of recording, so I own a marketing agency that I call a performance marketing agency that brings in about $50K US per month. And since January, I have another business with a partner who you may know from Twitter, PD Mangan at Mangan150. And this is a health optimization coaching program that also brings in 50 to 75K per month.
Awesome, brother. It sounds like, when you just talk like that, it sounds like it was just a smooth sailing journey. But obviously there were most likely moments where you had no idea what you're doing, or just like what am I doing here? And you spoke about the failures, and you mentioned briefly that, but I want to touch on that and go a little more in depth on that, because I think that will be really valuable for people. Talk to me about some of the failures.
Yeah, so that definitely more failures than successes, right? Maybe I'll just preempt that with you don't need every project or every attempt to be a home run, right? You just need one. And very rarely do people know what they want to do, know how to do it, and find either a product market fit or an offer market fit the first time, right? So my journey wasn't different. The first thing I learned about was drop shipping. So that got me into, Facebook ads, Alibaba, Shopify, and in copywriting to a degree. I didn't spend a ton of time doing that, but enough to understand the mechanics. I sold a grand total of 0 products. I went after a couple different niches. I did something in childhood education with grandparents as an avatar. I also did an info product in the health space with a target of people with digestion issues, so like IBS, gut issues, candida, things like that. Also 0 sales. So those 2 things. I spent more time on the info product. Easily hundreds of hours of work, building funnels, learning skills, and not getting an immediate return, but that taught me a lot. And my third thing that I tried and started getting success in was what you would call lead generation, so helping small businesses get clients. I did a couple different things just for time here. What ended up happening and working for me was finding a dentist in my network that was willing to invest in ad spend. So I worked for free for this dental practice in early 2019. And, my goal was to prove that my model worked and get a testimonial. And, even when I started doing that, things didn't work the first time. Facebook ads didn't work the first time. Landing pages were not perfect the first time. Logistics in the office, right? A lot of moving pieces. But after, I guess, about 60 days, it started working. And then, we said we'd do this for 100 days. So by the time we hit day 100, so my client who I was working for free, had invested about 6,000 in advertising and had returned 35,000 in revenue. So in dental services. So, that gave me confidence that what I was doing was working. Trying and failing all the different pieces of a funnel. You can learn, you can buy courses, you can get coaching, and I endorse and have done all those things, but there's nothing like actually doing it, right? So that proved to me that it worked. And the benefit that I had was I was already in my 30s. I already had money, so I was able to grow my agency pretty quickly using Facebook ads. So I was getting dentists on the phone, giving them an opportunity to work with me, and then now my team, in a similar fashion that I would get them patients. So that helped give me credibility. So I was able to get enough clients to quit my job in July 2019. And since scaled that business to, as I was saying before, about 50K per month in revenue. And now really my passion project is what I'm doing with Mangan, and we can go deeper there if you'd like, but just for time, a lot of iteration and experimentation there before finding the winning formula.
And see, it's so interesting to me, right? Because like, this is something that I've touched on with previous guests, but it's like you look at someone in your past year, right? It certainly sounds like your past year has been pretty insane, where you're like, you were working a job and then you quit the job and now you have financial freedom, and it looks from the outside that this just happened all overnight in the past 12 months, 13 months. And then what you really find out is like, oh my God, there were failures. There were struggles along the way. And I'm just so grateful for you to be able to bring that to the table and be able to express that, because I think it's something that we just skip over. And most of the time, and we see the success, and what we don't actually give time to is all the time when it wasn't working out, when you had no idea that there was going to be success. You just were hoping or believed that there was going to be.
Yeah, it's very common, right? And I mean, I think the most famous example is Edison, right? Like I found out 1,000 ways to not make a light bulb happen. Yeah. And that's really it, right? However, famous or anonymous people are, it's not impossible to have your first attempt work well, but I would posit here that if your first attempt works well enough for that to be full-time income, you either shot too small or you waited too long, right? You waited to be perfect. You were mitigating risk. You were mitigating your imposter syndrome. So you will learn more trying and failing than mere studying without execution, right? And the beauty now, obviously, as we talk about on Twitter every day, is that you can experiment and try things for very little money, sometimes no money, right? There's a ton of game being shared on the timeline. There's a vast number of resources. Without going into the whole, college versus not college thing, you can basically create an internship for yourself with a combination of, free learning, books, YouTube, maybe working for some people for free like I did. Obviously, there are some great courses and coaching programs. If you can find yourself, I think most people find you on Twitter, right, Danny? So if you can find yourself listening to this podcast, there's no reason why you can't make a healthy income online, but you have to pay with blood, sweat, and tears in the beginning. Mm-hmm. You almost certainly will, but it could mean, 50 years of time and location independence. So to me, it's an easy trade-off. But I understand that for some people, it's scary, it's difficult. Mm-hmm. They may have a comfortable job, but there's no decision I'm more grateful about than that of actually trying.
Yeah, what I find so cool about the internet in particular is that you put out a piece of content, it doesn't cost you anything except your time, right? You can put out as much as you want or as little as you want. It's completely up to you, and no one's stopping you, and the only person stopping you is your own mind, right? Like, or the amount of hours in the day. Like, but what's crazy is it's available to all of us. If you're listening to this podcast, it's available to you to put out whatever content you want, and a lot of us balk at that opportunity because we're like, well, what will people think, and will my friends like this, and is this really me? And that was me for a long time. And I don't know if you dealt with that as someone older, but it was just like, it could be in your head. Like, is this content me, and all this stuff. And so I just think the internet is so cool that you could put out whatever content you want and it doesn't matter. And it's up to you how much you want to put out. And that's something you've been so good at, is like putting out so much content.
Going back to what you said about friends and family, right? Mm-hmm. That's a real struggle for many people, and I've had my own share of doubt, or of what do I want people to think of me. I mean, I think the truth is most people don't care, right?
Of course.
Like maybe they'll have a private thought, or they'll say, oh, who does he think he is? So in my last job, I was a national marketing manager for the biggest telecom company in Canada. So I had a pretty big job, important responsibility, but really in the corporate hierarchy, I was nothing special, right? There were people that were there for longer. There were people, obviously many people that were senior. I think between me and the guy running the company, there was like 8 levels, right? So I was definitely not a big shot, high status person in the organization. And when I started my agency, so at first I did it incognito. So I blocked everyone on Facebook, on Twitter, because I was starting to do some organic posting, right, to promote myself. Then I unblocked people after, because you're like, oh, you never know if someone will know a dentist or know a potential client. And then a good friend of mine sent me a private exchange that he had with someone else. And he said, oh, like, who does he think he is? What does he know about dental marketing, is what the person said, right? And I just laughed at that point. I'm like, well, it's really, I was a national marketing manager bringing tens of millions of dollars to a large company. Mm-hmm. Why couldn't I get a dentist patient, right? Like at that point, I had already overcame a lot of those limiting beliefs and mindset issues. But yeah, you know what? I think if you're on the fence, I think you just have to accept that some people will be jealous, some people will be haters, and a lot of it I think comes from people manifesting their own insecurity and their own lack of courage in the face of you showing grit, perseverance, and a willingness to put yourself out there, right? So whether that's content like you're building essentially a publishing company, right? Your newsletter, your tweets, your podcast, and some people would say, well, you need permission, or you need a network, or you need something or someone to tell you you can do it. But I tweeted something a few days ago with a permission slip, like a blank permission slip. And the beauty of the internet, if there's one thing, is that you don't need anyone's permission. You can do whatever you want. You'll make friends. You'll make allies. Maybe enemy is such a dramatic word. Maybe not enemies, but there will be people that are jealous, that are haters, and it's mostly their own insecurity, right? I think that's unavoidable. And any kind of success, right? Even in a standard corporate environment, you'll get promoted ahead of certain people. You'll get a more coveted assignment. There will always be people that are judging you for doing the right thing. So as long as you're doing things ethically, as long as you're being honest, you should not be worried about that.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And one thing that I'll add to that is when you are acting in alignment with who you truly are, it gives you the confidence to share who you are. What I mean by that is in 2018, for those of you who don't know, I went under a Twitter handle named Danny Roars. And my name is Danny Miranda. And the reason why I chose Danny Roars looking back was likely because I was embarrassed with the content that I was putting out there or insecure about it. And when a friend showed me my profile and was like, oh, is this you? Like, oh my God. I felt a little weird about it at first. And more friends started to follow my account, and I still felt weird about it. And the reason why is because, the reason why I think at least, is because what I was posting wasn't truly me. It wasn't fully in alignment with who I was at that time. And that was coming through, and it made me feel insecure. And I kind of wanted to keep that to myself, and I didn't want them to know about it. But now, going under my real name, posting under my real name, now I'm so happy that my friends follow along and my friends read my newsletter and my friends read my tweets. It makes me so happy that they're getting that information too. And so I think it really comes down to alignment, whether or not you are happy with your friends or people in your circle seeing that. What do you think about that?
I agree completely. And, I'll build on that to say it's normal that your view about any topic evolves over time. It's normal that, people tweeted that in different ways. You kind of should cringe at old stuff, right? Whether it's what you said, how you said it, that shows progress, right? If you're 40 now and you look at what you did at 20 and you're like, wow, that was my peak. Well, that's sad. That's not good, right? Like you want to be constantly evolving. Just on the alignment, I'll add, again, because we have probably a pretty Twitter heavy crowd. And there are people with jobs that it's safer to be anonymous. There are people in geopolitical situations where it's safer. So, an example I'll call out is Rogue Wealth, right? So Rogue Wealth lives in Venezuela. I believe he is doing the smart thing. I know him personally, but he's doing the right thing in not using his name on Twitter. But I do think that if you have the opportunity to have that extra bit of skin in the game, it's wise. It will urge you to do better. And just from a strategic perspective, not, I don't know if it was maybe David Perel or James Clear or someone of that stature that said it, but the resume of the future is your library of content, right? I think it was Perel. So if you have expertise and, informed opinions about something, if you have, for you, I love the word vibe, right? When I think of Danny Miranda, I think good vibes. And whether someone wants to hire you as a freelancer, as an agency, whether you were to accept a job or an appointment on some board, they know what to expect. And that's way better than a standard resume or a credential. Not that a resume is bad, not that credentials are all useless. That's not true. But there's nothing like your real voice and your real digital assets for people to get to know the real you. And, you're just like this podcast, right? Who knows where I'll be, or you'll be in 5 or 10 years. And maybe people will look back and say, wow, that was early Danny, right? Like, I can't believe there's an early Danny recording. Danny is now doing this or the other, this other amazing thing. So it's really smart to create assets under your real name and real face if you can.
Yeah, man. It's so interesting talking to someone who's consumed similar content but has a slightly different take or just a more nuanced take. And because, dude, this is exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I'm just so happy that, first of all, thank you for the compliment on the good vibes. That's exactly what I'm trying to do. And the second thing is, like, whenever you put out content, that's literally your resume. That's your perspective on the world. And every bit of content builds and builds and builds until, you just keep going. And it produces a way for people to know who you are. And it produces a way for you to track yourself. And I'll even go back on my tweets from 2018 and I'll be like, wow, like, that was a good point. Or wow, that was an idiotic thing to say. I would never say that today. And that was only 2 years ago. And what's amazing is that we all can have that. We all can have that ability to put ourselves out there. A lot of the times it's just about whether you want to take that step or not. And the other thing I'll say is, like, personal branding isn't for everyone. And, like, putting yourself out there on the internet is not for everyone. And I used to think, like, at some point, like, if you don't have a personal brand, if you're not an entrepreneur, like, you're doing things wrong. Like, but the truth is, it's not for everyone. And you might be listening to this and you might not want to go down that road, and that's completely fine. But you should ask yourself, like, why am I not doing it? What could I benefit from putting myself out there? And, like, if you have an actual reason instead of not thinking about it, like, then that makes sense. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I mean, almost everyone is doing it to some degree, right? If you just think of the most simple things like an Instagram account. Yes. Or a LinkedIn account, right? We almost all have. If you took, let's say, like, people 25 and up, right, that are earning a living as an entrepreneur or employed or a combination, you have something out there. So it's a matter of what narrative do you want out there about you, what you think, what you know. How you're perceiving, the reality that we're in, but it's different for everyone to a degree, right? Do you want it to be a handful of travel pics on Instagram and a LinkedIn account? As you said, I think it's wise to reflect on that. For some people, that's genuinely the smartest play, right? I'll just pick an example. Let's say you're a director or you're looking to become an executive in an organization. Having no controversial, polarizing things, a few travel pictures, and a good-looking LinkedIn profile, that may very well be the best bet, right? There's always risk in putting yourself and your thoughts out there. So it's not a black and white kind of thing. But for entrepreneurs, right, or people that have that desire, I think there's a very high percentage of people that are listening to this that have a goal to eventually have their own project, and that can take many, many forms. It makes sense to document what you're learning in public. Again, not my original thought. Again, I think that was Perel too. I seem to be channeling my best David Perel, who's a great follow if you don't follow him. Documenting what you're learning, collaborating with people, by sharing an idea or a takeaway, once you get to a certain point, people will tell you you're wrong. People will build on your idea. And if you're open and humble, that will upgrade your thinking. That's the other benefit, right? If you just consume, and I'm coming from a place where I've had an account on Twitter since December 2008, and I started tweeting daily in April 2020. So my ratio of lurking to producing, although I have put out, I don't know how many tens of thousands of tweets since then, but I'll tell you, I've done a tremendous order of magnitude higher value once I started having a dialogue, right? Rather than just consuming. It's really fun, and you can learn a lot, right? Like sometimes I'll share something, and someone will just highlight something that I never considered. Will recommend a specific tool, will tell me, hey, but don't forget this, or you're some people are just trolls, right? But some people will say, well, I think that's wrong because of this reason, and then I will completely change my mind and I'll be better for it.
It's absolutely correct. And you touched on something before that I want to highlight, and it was one of your tweets that really resonated with me, which was something along the lines of like, you have to be confident and also be humble or open-minded. Confident and open-minded. And it really is so true. So just like riff on that a little bit, like confidence and open-minded, and why they're seemingly paradoxical, but it's like super important to have.
I'm going to do another flex here. So someone I know personally, the founder of Farnham Street, Shane Parrish, we're both from the same place in Ottawa. So I've met Shane a number of times. And if you don't know Farnham Street, that's another great place. I think the kind of person that listens to this podcast, if you don't know Farnham Street, you'll love it. And the motto at one point of Farnham Street was firm ideas or firm opinions held loosely, right? So I think, you have to have the confidence to not necessarily pick a side, but have a worldview, right? Like there are things that I just know. Let me take one step back. I think most things in the known universe, I simply don't know they exist. Of the things I know exist, I don't know enough about them to have an opinion, right? So like, whatever the next breakthrough in physics will be, which there's competing theories of physics that don't ask me to explain. I won't be able to explain them, in a smart way. But I know there are competing theories. I have no clue which one is right, if either is right, if something new will come up, right? Same thing for artificial intelligence. So it appears that we will reach a point at which there will be an indistinguishable AI from humans. Is that happening in our lifetime? I have no clue. Is it going to be evil? Is it going to be good? I have no clue, right? But at least I know it exists, and if I choose to invest time, I'm confident, like to speak on confidence, I'm confident enough that I could go and read primary stuff and work from first principles and be able to shape an opinion about it and an understanding about it if I chose to do that. But if we go on AI, I have to have the humility that, it's not my expertise, even if it was, right? Like, even if it's something that I consider myself an expert on marketing, but I don't claim that my way is the only way and my way will work forever, right? Like, I know what works now in specific scenarios, but I'm always looking to find why I'm wrong or why whatever I'm doing at the moment is not optimal. Right. So it's possible to have the confidence and courage to hold an opinion and take action based on your best thinking and your current worldview. But it's suboptimal to think that you have reached mastery or expertise and that you have a perfect and, immutable belief about anything. Right. There's outside of maybe gravity and a handful of other things like that. It's good to be willing to change your mind because you probably will need to, right? We bash politicians for being flip-floppers, but really the real problem is people that haven't changed their mind since 1982. That's the problem. It's not flip-flopping, it's that.
It's really interesting because marketers are really doing what we're all trying to do. in business is like a good marketer is going to be testing everything and trying to figure out the best way to go about things. Like, what can I change about this ad? What can I change about this creative? And then a human being who's like trying to become the best version of themselves is asking them the same questions just for like sleep, let's say, like, how can I get better sleep? How can I improve my workflow? And that's what's really interesting to me about you is like you're doing it in marketing and you're coming at it from that perspective. And it, I'm sure, leads you in the real world to be like, okay, what can I change? What can I produce? What can I flip about this situation? So what types of ways has marketing introduced you to change in your own life or asked you to flip things in your own life?
That made me think of, in a way, we're all scientists, right? We may not be running controlled experiments. We may not have a statistically significant sample for most things or virtually anything, right? But we can, you talked about sleep and marketing. So, health more broadly. So I have a business in health, right? So I'll touch on that for 30 seconds. One thing I've learned from my partner, PD Mangan, is a lot of different things are effective. Right? There's not one way that's effective and everything else is garbage. It's a matter of what is efficient and what is sustainable. If you're looking to lose fat, right? Well, we know fasting works. If you told me what is the fastest way for me to lose body fat, it's very simple. Do not eat food. Your own body fat has all the energy stores you need. If you're 20 pounds overweight, and I'm not saying you should do this is not health advice, but just to illustrate that point, you could go on a 14 or 21 day fast and you would lose your fat. This is healthy. There's no problem doing this, but it's definitely not sustainable, right? Whatever you did to get to a point where your body fat was higher than a healthy level, that's what you need to address. And in marketing on Twitter, right, especially, right? So the most common things you see are urgency and scarcity, right? And I'm not saying these are bad. I'm not saying that people using these tactics are bad, and I'm not saying they don't work. They do work. But the easiest example is you've got an offer and you're saying, well, the next 10 people can get $20 off. So that does work. But I'm going to say that can't be your only strategy. And that's only one of many strategies to be successful. And in the long term, right, the equation I like for marketing is simply creating value and capturing a portion of that value. So your job as a marketer is to increase the objective value if you have any input into the actual product or service, and then to increase the perceived value. When you're doing that, you don't have to compete on price. You don't have to resort to, or at least constantly resort to tactics like that of urgency and scarcity. And you can capture either the same or a higher percentage of the value you're creating, right? So if I think of my investment that I've made into myself as a marketer, so Tej is one person who I've done business with, right? He has a multi-$1,000 university, which is great, by the way. I personally signed up to get one-on-one calls with Tej. So he may change that model in the future. So nothing against the content. I've looked at some of it, not all of it. What I wanted for me was there was a specific investment and there was a number of calls. And to me, I just looked, okay, well, this means that I can speak to Tej X number of times for Y number of dollars. Worth it. There's other programs I've invested about $25,000 in. And, you could argue that the same information was available for free, available in books, available elsewhere. But what I got in that program was the environment. So there were events and there was a group of people that were earning, basically the average person in the elite program that I was in, that was the second tier offer. The average person was making $1 million a year. So going to events making friends and dialoguing with these people, the term they use is normalization. So it proves that you're not going after something impossible or something crazy. In November of last year, so just under a year ago, I went to my first event in person in Nashville. And I was having lunch with people that I had seen in the Facebook group and I was aware of. And, I met them and, going around the table, at that time I was making maybe 30K a month. And I was talking to different people and, hey, one guy's making 100, one guy's making 2, one guy's making 75, one guy was making 800 per month. And, I'm not going to say I'm the smartest guy. I'm the hardest working guy. I do work hard and I'm not dumb. But, this is not about me. It's about being around other people, seeing they are normal people, right? They are doing things that I might not be doing. They are maybe working harder than I'm working, and they're real normal people. They're not genius, Mensa, PhDs, or anything of the sort, right? They're just normal people executing a good plan day in, day out. And I'll just add here, most of the people that were ahead of me in revenue at that time, they were doing fewer things, but optimizing them and doing them really well. So they didn't have 8 different funnels, 25 million different ad permutations. They weren't on 10 different platforms. They were mostly Facebook and Instagram, doing a proven thing with really solid messaging, with deep research, knowing exactly what they are offering to whom, and have been in the game long enough to have a lot of testimonials and success stories. That was the secret, if there's a secret. And so that, my investment, just that one lunch changed my life. So if I had paid 200,000 for that coaching program, it still would have been worth it, because I have, 20x that investment since then, and it's going to work with me for the rest of my life.
It sounds like you are huge on surrounding yourself with the people that are in the position that you want to be in. And that's something that I think we take for granted, and we just accept so often, at least speaking personally, so often I'll accept the situation that I'm in and be like, oh, this is it. I'm with these people, nothing I could do about it. But so you said, you know what, I'm going to go out of my way. I'm going to find people who are in the position I want to be in, and I'm going to just attach myself to them. It doesn't matter how much it costs. And that's a real difference maker, right? What's amazing to me is that the internet allows us to do this at all times. The internet allows us to surround yourself with people who are in the position that you want to be in. You want to be in sick shape? Go follow 50 people who are in sick shape. You want to be rich? Follow 50 people who are rich. So yeah, man, hats off to you. And that's awesome that you took that initiative and you were able to just attach yourself to these people.
And a couple of things to build on that. So agree with you 100%, or again, the people that are listening to this, or overlap of people we're following on Twitter is probably quite high, right? So this is an incredible environment. You could argue better than any coaching program in its own. I think combining both is good if you're serious about building a real business and improving yourself. The one thing I'll say is there's something special about meeting people in person, and the mere fact of interacting with people, that group, right? So those people had paid, the exact number was, I think it was $27,500 US to be in that program. And so, that the people that are there, it doesn't mean they're all, geniuses or exceptional, but they are serious, right? Mm-hmm. That question of skin in the game. On Twitter, some people, and I'm not sub-tweeting or sub-talking about any one individual, but not everyone has the same level of commitment. And you would be cautious to not take what everyone says at face value, whether they're anonymous or not. And there's something really unique about being in a group of people that are investing in themselves and going towards a common goal. So I think if you're serious about pursuing a specific goal, right? So there are communities that exist to achieve almost anything, right? So David Perel has one for writing, not necessarily copywriting, but actually writing. There are some for productivity. Lambda School, LAMBDA, seems to be absolutely phenomenal. I know one guy who just graduated for people that want to learn how to code. I won't name drop all the marketing ones, but there's different marketing ones you can use. If you're serious, right? If you just think of it in the way that for the price of a year in college and often for less, you can get direct access to people that have achieved what you want to achieve. If you look at dollars versus a book or YouTube, then it's very expensive, right? A $27,000 coaching program sounds insane compared to YouTube and free stuff on Twitter. But if you tell yourself, what needs to be true for me to make my money back? What kind of belief and mindset upgrade can I expect? What kind of connections can I make? Then suddenly it can appear very cheap. So that's how I think, right? And I'm going to continue to spend a significant portion, maybe around 10%, right? So maybe $50,000 to $100,000 per year in various coaching and masterminds and events, because I want to stay sharp, because I want to upgrade my network, upgrade my thinking, and be surrounded by people that are always ahead of me, right? There's tremendous power and value in doing that.
Yeah, man. And this is exactly why I started the 75 Hard group chat and Slack channel that I created. And we're recording this episode September 4th, but I don't know exactly when it'll get released. But I created this 75 Hard group because I figured if all these people are surrounded by people who are also doing this program, then that's going to lead them to want to do it. And it's just simple, right? And so you can use this for anything you want to achieve, and it's awesome. The internet gives you that power.
It's it's interesting. Another thing that we talk about often on Twitter is habits, right? So one thing that James Clear says in this book that I've found to be true in my life is joining the best way to adopt a desired behavior is to join a group where that desired behavior is rewarded.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's nothing like that. And you don't need to drop all your friends and family. I don't think that friends that have different goals than you are toxic necessarily. Some people might be, right? I think it's always worth re-evaluating your beliefs and your surroundings with some kind of regular frequency, right? Whether it's every quarter, every 6 months, every year, that makes sense. I don't think every human relationship is meant to be for life, whether that's a romantic relationship or a friendship. You know what, maybe on this topic, right? Like I have a few friends and some family members that, quite frankly, I don't get much out of that relationship at this point. And what I found to be valuable was to do something with them, right? There's people that I don't want to have coffee with. There's, it's just not a pleasant experience, but I still want to be there for them or have them in my life. So doing something, right? Going to a movie, going to a sport event, playing sports, etc. So that can be positive. And then, going and finding people that, are doing the same thing as you or looking to achieve a similar outcome. I think that everyone can do. There's really no reason not to do that. And then when you decide that, I'll say the word inevitable, right? Once you decide something is inevitable, we can't all be billionaires. We can't all have Lamborghinis, but I think there's really no reason why anyone listening to this can't have the physical fitness that they want, and they can't have the financial freedom that they want, right? So let's call it, everyone can be ripped to a degree, and everyone can become a multimillionaire in the next, let's say, 10 years. there's really no reason why you can't do that. This is a bigger goal than most people have, and it's a scary goal for most people. But the day you decide this is butchering my words here, the day you decide it's inevitable in your life, surrounding yourself with people doing the same thing, and probably investing in working with people that have achieved that, that is not a guaranteed way, but that's the best way.
Couldn't agree more, brother. And what sticks out to me and what I want to touch on is we talked about cutting off your friends, and what I've found so often the case is that if you embody the person that you want to be and you are constantly taking those actions, what will happen is that a lot of your friends will say to themselves, what is that person doing? Like, what is he doing? Like, can I do that too? And I've just been amazed personally to see how many friends from college, high school have reached out to me and been like, yo, I want to do 75 hard. Can I do that? How do I get involved? And it's been really fulfilling for me to see that my actions are having real impacts on other people. And so, yeah, it's not so much like cutting people off, but it's like, can you be the person you want to be, and will that lead other people to be higher as well or bring them up as well?
Tell me a bit more about, so I know the concept of 75 hard, and I know you did this in Q1 this year, is that right?
So I did 75 hard for the first time on September 18th, 2019 was the first day I started. Okay. And first day, I find it on September 17th, find it, I'm like, yo, I'm definitely doing this 100%. This is what I need to be doing right now. It's, for those who are unfamiliar, 2 workouts, 1 outside, drinking a gallon of water, taking a progress picture, reading 10 pages, and following a diet, and doing this every day for 75 days. So I do this, and the next day, on day 1, I complete it, and immediately I text our friend Tej, and I'm like, hey, Tej, check out this program. You might like it. And he's like, dude, I'm doing this starting tomorrow 100%. We're going to text each other at the end of each day. And so I did this program, completely changed my life. In the beginning, I was someone who would start things, stop things, couldn't see things through. By the end, I was a machine. I was able to do whatever I set my mind to. I was just a completely different individual in every aspect. And it's why I'm so big on pushing this program. Obviously, anything that changed your life, you're going to talk about nonstop. And it's why people are so ruthless with talking about yoga and meditation. And people are just like, dude, shut up. But it's like, these are things that help change people's lives. So that's why they get talked about so often. And 75 Hard was this program for me.
So, just to add on that, right? Like the topic of platitudes.
Yes.
Right? There's these things, right? So physical fitness, protein, getting sun, meditation, reading, learning, all these things, right? There's
all the shit that I do every day.
So it's funny because it's a platitude if you've seen that advice a lot and if you're doing all of it already. Mm-hmm. Then I think you are allowed to call something up, and cold showers is the other big one, right? If you're really doing these things, then sure, call it a platitude. And if someone's account, if you're not satisfied with the ratio of platitudes to actionable advice, then unfollow them, right? I would argue that those platitudes are actually the most actionable advice for most people. Depending on where you are in your life, depending on where you are in the world, how much money you have, how much time you have, if you have children, you may or may not be able to start a side hustle tomorrow. But those things, right? Reading 10 pages, exercising, eating well, and you can do it. It's not more expensive or more time consuming than what you're doing already. And the things that became cliches, right? Like the old wisdom, whether it's from the Greeks, the Romans, the Bible, the Muslim tradition, the Quran, whatever you want to use as a source. Marcus Aurelius is another big one. if something stood the test of time, and time is very different online, right? Like if the same stuff has been repeated for 2 years, that's almost like a Lindy book that's been published for 500 years. I'm kind of joking, but I'm kind of not.
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And if people that are doing what you're doing, living the kind of life that you want to live, that are generally content. The word happy, I think, is kind of tricky, but people are generally content and fulfilled, are telling you that meditation and journaling changed your life. And the best you can do is call that a platitude and continue doing what you're doing. And the best you can do is just say, this is dumb. Well, it's your fault if your life isn't where you want it to be, right? Like, you don't necessarily need to do all of them. You don't necessarily need to do 75 hard, or you don't need to be a carnivore, or whatever the platitude you're mad about. But being open-minded about things is good. And if something became a cliche, it's probably true and it's probably powerful, right? As I think a lot of people have the inverse intuition, like, oh yeah, again, cold showers, right? Well, they work. Cold showers are scientifically proven to burn brown adipose tissue, so that's brown fatty tissue, independently of fitness and nutrition. And they help with your mental toughness and your mindset. And you prove to yourself that you can do something hard.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely has been the case for me. And I'm basically, by doing this program, just like a walking platitude. And I'm so completely content with that, because what you do every day is what you are signaling to other people what they should be doing. And I'm not saying that every single person listening to this should do 75 hard, or should be recording a podcast, or should be writing on the internet. But it's like, if you take what I'm doing and something resonates with you in some way where you're like, like maybe that would be beneficial for me. Maybe I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. Maybe I should start writing on the internet. Well, that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. I'm doing what I'm doing to signal to others who are open to that signal that this is what they should be doing. Does that make sense?
It makes total sense. And have you seen the movie Coach Carter?
It was one of my favorite movies when I was younger, but I haven't watched it in probably 10 to 15 years. Why do you bring it up?
So yeah, it's been a while. There's a couple things there. So I think we have a leadership gap, and to a large degree, it's a fatherless gap, whether it's an absence of a father or an absence of that leadership figure. That can be a woman, that can be a man. I don't think that matters that much, but we have that gap. So there's two things I'll touch on. So Coach Carter is a feel-good, I think it's a Disney movie, right? But if you actually watch that movie and you look at why Coach Carter is doing what he's doing, and the difference in outcomes in the other kids in that school and the kids that are actually following what Coach Carter's telling them to do, I think it is extremely significant. One of those things is about, it's a quote, I can't think of who the author of the quote is, but it's about, we're afraid of shining or brightest light because people will think we have an ego, or that might outshine others, right? Mm-hmm. But the real takeaway is that we should shine our light. So, we should write online, we should do hard things, because that will inspire people to do the same. And the other thing, same topic, if you're familiar with the author Michael Lewis, so great writer, highly recommend. Some of the best nonfiction you can read if you're interested in marketing and copywriting, the way he tells a story. So real stories, but he uses real people to tell the story, and does a lot of character building. So phenomenal writer, Michael Lewis. The movie Moneyball, and the Wall Street movie there as well. Anyway, there's another movie that were made as a result of his books. But he has another book called Coach. And that book is about his high school baseball coach and how that coach was a hard ass, but he changed his life. And he has a podcast now. It's a really good podcast. The season that's going on now, season 2, is about coaching. So pretty relevant to our conversation. And there's an episode about that particular coach and the different reactions of parents as time passes. So Michael Lewis went to school in the 80s, and a hard ass coach was welcome. And in the last 10 years, parents were essentially trying to castrate that coach. So they were trying to have him be a softy, feel good person. You hurt my kid's feeling, as opposed to having that coach teach lessons that parents aren't teaching. So the movie Coach Carter and the book Coach by Michael Lewis, those are things that have had a really big impact on me, and how doing hard things and having people inspiring you to do hard things is probably the biggest service you can do to yourself and someone can do for you. Just someone telling you you're real smart, you're real special, you're real good looking, and everything you're doing is so great, that does nothing for you, right? You need people to help you elevate your game, elevate your thinking, and elevate your standards.
Brother, you're giving me chills right now, because that is so true and something that I think about all the time. And what's really, really important to think about, and what was important for me in my journey for 75 Hard, that might be helpful for you listening, is that I was not someone who finished things. I was not someone who believed in myself. And I did it because I had to text Tej every single day. And texting Tej is someone I look up to, someone who inspires me. And I had to text him, and I was responsible for texting him every day that I completed all my tasks. So that became something that I needed to do, and it led me down a path of, I need to text Tej every day. If I don't text Tej, I'm screwed. And it changed my mentality for what I believed I could possibly do. And it expanded my being and expanded my soul. And it's like, if you don't have that right now, look for a coach. Look for someone you aspire to. Look for someone who you wouldn't want to let down, and tell them you're doing a difficult thing, because that changed my life. And that's why I try to, whenever I can, guide people on their own 75 Hard journey, is because when you're in the beginning of that, you might not believe you could be the type of person to actually finish. I certainly wasn't. And I don't believe I ever would have finished had it not been for Tej. But what's amazing is that at the end of the 75 Hard journey for me, I realized that I didn't want to let myself down in the future. So you can transform yourself to use that coach to become someone who becomes their own coach. And that's a really amazing part about life.
I absolutely love that. That's incredibly powerful. And, you know, if you mentioned, when we were talking before, you mentioned Tim Ferriss and you mentioned Joe Rogan. And obviously those are guys that have achieved a super high level at what they're doing. And, you know, real talk, you and I probably won't reach quite that level in our lifetime, right? I'm comfortable saying that. We probably won't get $100 million Spotify deal. And I think Tim Ferriss is a billionaire on paper. So, you know, those are massive accomplishments and outcomes.
I got some massive goals, Oliver.
Well, I love it, and so do I, right? What I want to say is, if you've seen interviews with those guys, and there's countless others, right? They would tell you they're normal people that have picked strategic goals, that have been relentless in execution, that have said no to a lot of things, and they made a calculation that what they did could work. The first stuff they tried didn't work. If you know Joe Rogan's journey, before he became the Joe Rogan we know, he did a ton of different things. There's Anthony Pompliano. So Pomp, his brother, just did a thread. I think his brother's name is Joe, but I could have that wrong. But another Pompliano did a thread about Joe Rogan's journey. And Tim Ferriss will share. I mean, I think what we love about Tim Ferriss is both the optimization stuff and the quality of guests, but how vulnerable he is, right?
Mm-hmm.
He tells you he's not happier being extremely rich and successful than he was before. He's had a lot of failure, mental health issues, and he would tell you he's a normal guy, right? He's just picked areas where he could excel. He's failed a lot. And, I'm not attaching myself to those two guys. Again, if I had to bet, I will not achieve that level of disproportionate outcomes. But, I'm not a genius, right? And I think, Danny, you would say the same. I don't think you would call yourself a genius, would you?
Mm-hmm. Definitely not.
And, we're not that special. If you look up to other people on Twitter or people that have accomplished things in business or in sports or where you're most focused at, there are people that are genuinely exceptional, statistically improbable, right? Maybe a chess grandmaster, people that are physical specimens that, maybe Usain Bolt, right? Like you could do the same stuff that Usain Bolt does. You probably won't get the same outcome, right? He just has a
Definitely not.
He's a superhuman. Certain people, maybe physicists, right? They just have I think I could do a PhD in physics if I put my mind to it, but I probably wouldn't come up with the breakthroughs that certain people I'm not going to get to the thinking that Stephen Hawking has gone to, right? But the beautiful thing about the world that we live in, going back to the internet and the platform, is you don't need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Being unique, being vulnerable, being authentic, and also being strategic about what you're putting your time and effort on. Certain things have a disproportionate possible positive outcome. Certain things have finite, one thing I tweeted a while ago was, if there's a skill you can learn quickly, it probably won't pay off big in the long run, right? So if something can be put in an employee manual, or if you can learn to do something really quickly, if we use like an easy example, the odds of you having a drop shipping store with the same phone case as everyone else making you a millionaire are very, very low. I'm not saying it's impossible. You might. Mm-hmm. But if you picked something different, something a bit more creative, if you actually got to know your market and help people solve a painful problem that they may not even fully understand they have, your odds of that might be a slower start, but that could create a disproportionately big positive outcome, right? So I think you want to be yourself, and you want to be smart and strategic about what you invest your time doing. And that's how maybe your first attempt won't be a success. Maybe it will be 0. Maybe your second, maybe your third. But if you stay at it, over a long enough period, and a long enough period is probably a couple of years. We're not talking about decades and decades here, right? If you focus and build the skills and actually do the work, there's no reason why you can't become the kind of person that now you admire on Twitter and you think, wow, they're so lucky, they have some kind of advantage. Maybe they have a small advantage, but you can achieve the same outcome as almost everyone you like and respect on Twitter if you actually focus for, let's start with 6 months, right? And see where that takes you.
Dude, and this is the crazy thing that 75 Hard taught me, which was that the hard things, the things that are going to eventually get you your success are going to be difficult. And that's actually a good thing, because that gives you an advantage that people who are taking the short, easy route aren't going to have. For those of you who don't know, I did drop shipping from 2018 to 2019. It was a very short-term play. I was thinking, how can I get the next store going? How can I make money tomorrow? How can I, with this podcast, with my writing online, it's less about how can I make money tomorrow? It's more like, how can I set myself up for 10 years from now? And that mindset was gained through 75 Hard. And that's why I love talking to you, brother, because it's like, that is everything. And if you can have that mindset and apply it to your own ventures and apply it to anything, it's like the difficult things are actually the things that you can start leaning into, and you can start being like, oh, wow, this copy is hard, writing this sales page is difficult, well, that's good because most people are going to quit, and then you're going to iterate and you're going to get better, and it just leads to more success.
That's exactly it. And I believe in human potential. I'm a positive person, despite if you're releasing this soon enough, I've had a few rants there that are a different energy. But the truth is, most people won't start, and most people that start won't see things through until the effort is worth it, right? So the mere fact of picking something, difficult or not easy in the short term, that tells you you've picked something that makes sense. Obviously, you want to match your strengths to what you're doing. If you are, a high level person, thinker, you do not like detail at all, well, there are certain things that don't make sense for you, right? And vice versa. If you love numbers, but you're not the most strategic, certain other things don't make sense. But there's an online high ROI skill that is compatible with your current best strength. And, if I can quote Steve Jobs here, right? Like one of the ones that hit me the hardest was when you realize that everything around you was built by people no smarter than you, that changes how you view everything, right? And again, I'm not saying I am Steve Jobs or you'll be Steve Jobs, but you realize that most things, right? If you walk around in your city and you see a successful business, if you buy something from an ad, if you buy a course, well, you're 2 or 3 years away from being able to do the same thing. And often it can go faster, right? It's kind of like, are you going to learn only from your own mistakes, or are you going to invest to help people or to have people help you see the road ahead and avoid some mistakes and share their own mistakes? You can do a lot of that through reading and studying too. I don't want this to sound like a pitch to any one coaching program. But again, I think if you're serious and you say, I'm in this world, I have this level of ambition, working with people that have done what you want to do. It's not a guarantee to success the first time, but it's the most likely way for you to get the results that you're after.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. And I want to, before we wrap up this conversation, I want to make sure we talk about your Twitter growth guide and the approach you took and what you're doing. And it might be topical because you might not be doing this in a year from now or be releasing this a year from now. But what you did to me was so brilliant. And I want to touch on it and make sure that everyone who's trying to be on Twitter or wants to check this growth guide out, checks it out, because it's not just a guide. It's like a video course, and you released it all for free. And that's really what I'm getting at is like, why did you release it for free, and what was your thought process?
Yeah. We're summer 2020, right? So this may not be relevant if you're listening to this later. So you could skip ahead 3 minutes.
But the principles might be, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they probably would be. So I started tweeting daily about just over 100 days ago. Let's call it 100 days just to make the story a little cleaner. It's a little more, maybe it's 130, 140, but let's say 100 days ago. And I had one advantage was that I knew some of the larger accounts personally outside of Twitter. And what drove me to start tweeting was being in different Telegram groups, talking to different people, and sometimes even writing tweets for other people. I'm like, hey, you should tweet this, or, sharing something that could have been a tweet, but in a group. And I'm not, why was I not doing it out in the open? I don't have a great answer. I guess it's insecurity, as you said before, Danny. I had my real name, my real face. I tweeted occasionally, but very sporadically. And so I started to tweet. My friends encouraged me. Again, Rogue Wealth was one of them. Lawrence King was one too. And I was telling them stuff on a group, and they're like, why don't you just tweet that, right? Like, don't tell me here, just tweet it, right? And eventually I said, okay, fine. Like, there's really no, like, the worst thing that can happen is I do it for a bit, then I stop, right? So I decided to start. I wrote a few threads because I was afraid of running out of ideas and running out of content, which now, 3 months later sounds comical. I can fire off 20 tweets a day, and if there's one thing I don't have a problem with is coming up with tweet ideas. But it's funny, I was concerned about that at first. So I pre-prepared a few threads, a few tweets. So I figured, okay, I've got like 2 weeks of content, right? So I did that. There was a good response. Again, I had the benefit of having some people I knew retweet me, so that definitely helped. But I did a lot of, what I advise to do in that course, which is, making relationships, forming bonds, commenting on other people's content, and then helping people discover your profile. So when I got to 10,000 people in my Twitter tribe, I said, I'm going to release everything I've learned. And, that day I said that I was at 9,000 something. I got to 10,000 and I recorded a 20-minute video. And I'm like, okay, how should I release it? What should I do? But then, I was deliberating over a few days, and then I would wake up each morning and say, oh, but I didn't say this. So I would write that down. And then, that happened for like a week or 2 weeks. And then I had a list of 30 plus different topics I wanted to touch on. So the original video that I recorded was about 20 minutes. That became 3 different topics. But then I'm like, well, if I'm going to do something, I want it to be good. Mm-hmm. And I knew there was a lot of appetite for Twitter growth. Not necessarily, I think, my perspective. Some people wanted my own perspective, but many people want to grow their account, right? A lot of people were selling guides or giving guides. And so my intention wasn't to just, stop other people from selling guides. There's nothing wrong with someone selling their expertise. I laugh when people say, oh, something is, a $29 or $49 ebook is a scam. That nothing makes me laugh more than that on Twitter. If you don't like it, don't buy it, right? And if you looked at my Gumroad, I looked at it yesterday. I have 79 different things in my Gumroad right now, and some of them I haven't looked at. Some of them it's purely I want to support a friend of mine, and some of it, which I don't actually recommend for most people. I have the not the flex, but I have the benefit of $100 ebook. It's nothing for me at this point, right? So anything that is remotely interesting, I buy it. And if I get one piece of information, sometimes a single sentence, just like in a regular book, right? You can buy any number of self-help book or business book or biography and just get one thing out of it, and that was worth the $20 or $30. The real cost is time. So anyway, I figured if I was going to do something, well, I want it to be good. I want it to be the best. So I had already read most of the Twitter guides out there, and I knew what was out there. Some of it I was applying. Some of it I didn't really love, like the advice of being polarizing, right? Just being polarizing for the sake of being polarizing. So that's something that it's effective. I don't really believe in it. I think that's short-term thinking, right? You can get a lot of retweets or a lot of likes, but you're not really, and not that I've never tweeted anything polarizing, but anything I've tweeted that was polarizing, it was an actual belief of mine. It wasn't me just baiting attention. It was the most polarizing phrasing of something that I actually believe. So I decided at one point, and I would love to tell you, I had one aha moment. It was just a culmination of me taking notes and looking at what I wanted to do. And I decided, if I'm going to do this, I want it to be the best possible Twitter guide. And I had already said I would give it for free, so I wasn't going to, break that promise. And so I decided to really be exhaustive and say, like, what would I have wanted to know when I started? And what it ended up becoming was what I think is the best guide on Twitter, but most importantly, it's how to think about content creation. Mm-hmm. What is the real purpose of being a creator? And I called the course Influence, Growth, and Monetization. So I think everyone is craving influence. Not everyone is craving monetization, but everyone, if you're tweeting, by definition, you want to have influence. You probably want to grow your account. In theory, you can be influential to a small group of people. And it's not true that you need to have 10,000 followers to make money and be influential. You know, there are people with 1,000 followers that are incredibly influential. And if they ever put out an offer or a program, you know, half their followers would give them 10 grand, right? So it's not about just size, but generally people want to grow. And of course, there's a lot of appetite to monetize. So I thought I would address all those topics. And then I asked myself, you know, what has to be true for this to be the best Twitter guide? So I realized that it had to be two things. It had to be the best and most exhaustive content. There's this framework in consulting from McKinsey that is mutually exclusive, completely exhaustive. So that's how I treated the curriculum. So every piece of content in there, so there's 39 different things, and there's some guest modules, which I'm very grateful people like Jose Rosado offered to add to that. So you've got content for people that are newcomers and people that are experts. I think almost everyone that joins that free course will find at least one idea. And then, you know, I was putting my name and my reputation on the line, right? So I decided if I'm going to release a free course, it has to be the best. It has to be solid. And I have no imminent paid products coming. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to give people a taste of the day that I decide to directly monetize Twitter. If my free course is this level of quality, both from a content perspective and an experience perspective. So it was really important for me not just to give good content, but to create a really good user experience. So to show people that the day, and you know, that day may not be this year, it may not be next year, but if and when I decide to do something, this is what you get for free. Imagine what you get for money. That was really, you know, the extent of my thinking.
And I think that's why we get along so well, because I would put myself in exactly the same category as you just described. Not selling anything right now, no plans to sell anything in the near future. But it's like if you just keep putting out good content that people resonate with, things that people really enjoy, and connect with people in a real way, which you do, it then becomes a no-brainer for people to spend money with you because they know what you put into the things that you give them for free. And that's exactly how I think about my newsletter, Tuesday Treasure. That's exactly how I think about this podcast. That's exactly how I think about my tweets and my blog posts. It's just like, just keep giving. Give. And then it's like when the day comes when you ask for something, hopefully people support you. That's just the model that I subscribe to, and it seems like the model that you're following to a T, and it explains why we are on the same page about so much and have been on the same page about so much during this conversation.
I love it. And you know, I'll just add, right? I have absolutely no negative feelings towards people that are monetizing Twitter, how early they're monetizing Twitter, what they're selling, as long as it's ethical, it's their own information. I think there's nothing wrong with selling. You know, there's few brand new original ideas that come from nothing, right? Everything is built on the shoulders of giants. Excuse me. So there's nothing wrong with that. I think that if your goal is massive, right? And we were talking about billionaires and Tim Ferriss and Joe Rogan and all that stuff. So my goal isn't necessarily to be a millionaire or to be a billionaire, but definitely my goal is to be, you know, very successful from a money perspective, where, you know, we're talking tens of millions of dollars. So I have no interest in making a quick 50 or 100K with something, right? I think, you know, in relative modesty, I probably left 100K on the table with that Twitter guide. But to me, at this point in my life, again, $100,000 would not change my life, right? It wouldn't. For some people, it would, right? There are some, I won't name names, but you know, there's friends I have in not Rogue Web, but other people in Latin America where for them, making $1,000 per month is literally life changing, right? So I respect that 100%. I have the great fortune of having two thriving businesses that pay for way more than I will probably ever need, frankly. And so it was important for me to put something out there that's of, to quote other people that have used it, of high quality, and to do it for free to kind of level the playing field, right? And then some of those people will be eventual clients or buyers or customers. But that's secondary, right? It was really about creating my first product under my name and making it really good. And I take a lot of pride in that.
Doing the right thing is always the right thing, brother. And it's clear from what you're doing on Twitter and elsewhere that you're embodying that. And it's a pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. And I'm so grateful that you took the time. Do you have any last words, and where can people find you?
I think I've had a lot of words. I don't need more words. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure as well. Like literally a real conversation that happens to be recorded. That's the best kind of podcast, I think. People can find me on Twitter at Oliver Cantin, except an extra I. So OLIVIERCANTIN. I'm sure you'll have that in show notes anyway. I'm on Twitter all the time. And that free course is called Twitter Growth, Influence, and Monetization. It is somewhere on my timeline by the time you've listened to this podcast episode. And I wish your listeners health, wealth, and wisdom.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you, Danny. Great pleasure.
That was my conversation with my man Oliver. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know on Twitter at Hey Danny Miranda. I feed off your reviews and your energy. And if you enjoyed it, let me know. Make sure to leave a review on iTunes. That really helps other people find the show. And thank you for listening. I really, really, truly appreciate that you listened to the final second. Until the next one.